Okay, good morning. Welcome back. Happy Friday. Today is our 12th class, and today is our review day. We're just going to talk generally about the test, and then you'll spend most of today just doing some practice problems. Our test is coming up this Wednesday, October the 5th. It is on everything, first 10 classes of material that first 11 classes of material that we covered. Right after the test, Friday this week, I will hand you 2 brand new projects, but you don't need to worry about those right now. Everything that you're doing should be focused on preparing for Wednesday's test. Questions on the calendar? Okay, so at the bottom of page 74, I've got something that I typed up this morning, which you do not have in front of you. So I'm just going to read this little thing here in greenish. I'm going to hand both projects back. I finished grading the projects this weekend. I spent far too much time spending the grading projects this weekend, but in any event, I'm going to hand them back. And I just want to make a couple of observations that hopefully will help some people heading into Wednesday's test. So on the project, some folks continue to omit some very important pieces of notation, for example, equal signs and Fs and F primes and zeros. And some folks lost points on the quiz for that, and then lost points on the project for that. And I'm hoping that this will prevent some people from also losing points on the test for that. Again, I'm not here to be a stickler for notation. I'm here to encourage you very strongly to write mathematics correctly. And notation is supposed to help us do that efficiently. Trust me, I have things I'd rather be doing than checking your notation, but I think it's important, so I'm spending my time doing it, and I'm telling you now, you're not going to outlast me by using bad notation. I will get you all semester, and if you take Calc 2, I'll get you next semester too. So it's one of us is going to bend, and I'm hoping it's you guys soon. So when you're writing things on the test, don't let any of your work float on the page. We don't want things that are just out in the ether with no connection to the previous work. Writing a bit too much is far better than writing a bit too little. Levi. Hmm? Yeah, good question. Great question. So that's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about making sure that your work is labeled. You're asking about how much work needs to be shown to justify, going from one step to the next. So how much work you need to show and how much you can omit depends on an agreement that we're building with each other this semester. And so, for example, if you have to solve the equation 3x equals 6 someplace in the middle of a calculus problem, and you put x equals 2, super. But if this were an algebra class maybe a couple of semesters ago, I might take a point off and say, hey, how did you do that? And I would insist a couple of semesters ago that you show me that step. So how much you have to show really depends on the expectations that we develop for each other here in the course. I don't have just like a single answer that I can give you, but if for example you're solving this equation, I'd really need to see the factoring before I saw. What are we doing here? Is this right? 4 and 3. I think those are okay. Yeah, so I would expect to see a step in between those two things. Is that, you asked about factoring, this is what came to mind. Yeah, I don't know, 16, I don't know, something. So how much you have to show depends on the class and the expectations that we lay out here in class. But still, writing a bit too much is much better than writing a bit too little, okay? All right, on the arbitration project, I graded question 4A. That was the very first one where you had to start doing derivatives and making your table with the endpoints and all that. I looked really closely for notation there, and if I was going to take points off for notation, you're going to see it on 4A. I pretty much only skimmed the rest of the way for notation errors. I still looked at all the math, but to preserve my own sanity, I stopped looking as closely for notation stuff from that point forward. Just because I didn't take points off doesn't mean I'm giving you my approval to omit Fs and F primes and things like that. This was me trying to save myself more hours. So anyway, and then we've got 4 tough projects remaining. Like I said, I'll give you the next 2 right after we take our test. In terms of their difficulty, the difficulty is going to be more similar to the trucks project than to the arbitration project. The arbitration project is really this outlier thing in terms of like having to read a paper that is probably out of the discipline that you guys are most comfortable with. So the rest of the projects are going to be similar to trucks in difficulty, but they're all challenging. Some people are doing a great job working with their classmates. Some people I could tell didn't work with anybody else, and I think that the grades suffered as a result. And you can like catch a mistake early on in the project by comparing with your neighbors, but if you don't compare with anybody, you can have this mistake just sort of carry on through the entire project. We don't want that. Okay. So these are just general observations. Hopefully this will help us a little bit as we head into the test and also into the remaining projects. Like I said, I'll hand these things all back in just a couple of minutes. All right, so we are now going back to the top of page 74. Let's read through some of this general review stuff for the test. And by the way, if you hadn't submitted one or both of the projects and you have them, throw them in the green folder right now. Okay, a brief outline of the subject areas for the test. The focuses on the test are functions and models, notation, terminology, sketching and interpreting graphs, limits, and derivatives. That's broad stroke. Types of functions. We've talked about linear, polynomial, power, and rational functions. I want you to be able to distinguish, work with, and write formulas for the different types of functions, and of course, solving equations. We talked about limits, continuity, and derivatives. Limits, we had to evaluate them. We had to know whether or not they existed. We had to be able to look at end behavior and decide about limits, and we should be able to estimate limits numerically. For continuity, I want you to know how to tell if a function is continuous and what it means, just the straight definition for continuity. And then derivatives is a whole long list here. I want you to be able to find a derivative at a point and a derivative function, numerically, graphically, algebraically, with the lengthy limit definition, and with the rules, power rule, product rule, quotient rule, etc. The lengthy limit definition of the derivative, you guys remember the whole this thing here, and then in the front we had h going to 0, and then we had like 8 lines of algebra, and then eventually we could get our answer. This test will be the last time that I ask you to do this thing. Right, we started talking about the shortcut rules. We're going to have many more shortcut rules for the rest of the semester, but this is your one last chance where I might ask you to do one of these limit definitions of the derivative. I want you to be able to interpret the first and second derivative, including units, and I want you to understand what the sign of the derivative tells you about whatever contextual problem we're in. You should be able to relate derivatives to graphs. You should know some stuff about second derivatives and differentiability. When is a function not differentiable? Common question. And then finally, our applications of the derivative. We had local and global extrema with both the first and second derivative tests. The first derivative test we covered in class together one day. The second derivative test was embedded in the last activity. So if you didn't finish that activity, you're going to need to go back and take a look at it. I might ask you to do both first and second derivative tests, optimization and modeling. Things to know about the test. Oh, by the way, that is a very well, I don't want to call it a short, but that is an abbreviated list of what's on the test. A couple of pages from here is a much more detailed list of skills that I would like you to have. Okay. So that is there. Okay, so continuing on, things to know about the test. You will be able to use a one-page front and back sheet of notes on the test. You can write anything that you want on this piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, front and back, write really small if you want to. You can write theorems, you can write definitions, you can write formulas, you can write practice problems worked all the way out step by step, right? Lyrics to your favorite Taylor Swift song, whatever you want to do to keep you inspired on that test, you can put on the piece of paper. Everything is fair game as long as it's something that you write or that you type. I don't want you to come in with a photocopy of stuff from my packet or stuff from our textbook or somebody else's review sheet. Making the review sheet is an important part of a healthy study plan, so make a good one. And then after the test, you don't need to give that review sheet to me, but I don't think you should throw it in the recycle bin because you're welcome to bring that with you to the final exam along with your review sheets for the other tests. So hold on to it after the test. You won't be able to use your textbook or any other notes. On tests and quizzes, you may use a scientific calculator, but not a graphing calculator, not your cell phone. I will lend you one on Wednesday if you need one. The test is intended to be a 1-hour test, but I use a relaxed time limit on tests. Anyone can have extra time to take the test. You may take the test anytime during the, okay, so normally we go until 9:50. I'm happy to give you 10 more minutes on that end. Normally we start at 8:40. I'm happy to give you 40 more minutes on that end. So I'm giving everybody 2 hours. That is not to say it is a 2-hour test. It is not designed to be a 2-hour test. But I want to make sure I give you the time to show me that to be able to show me what you know and not feel like you're crunched for time and having to speed through, maybe making careless errors or feeling like all kinds of time pressure, all right? That said, I know that this means that some of you are going to need to get up earlier in order to take advantage of our earlier start. Don't show up at 8:40 and then at 10 o'clock tell me that you want another half hour. That puts me in a very difficult position. If you want that extra half hour, come at 8. If you finish early, you leave early. There's no penalty for coming at 8 other than like 2 less hits of the snooze alarm, you know, like the snooze button on your alarm clock. All right? Okay. And do talk to me ASAP if you have an official accommodation for providing for extra time. I encourage you to show all work on the test. The more you can clearly demonstrate your understanding of the material, the better your chances for partial credit. There is no homework assignment for next class study. Below, you'll find the assignment due at the start of the class after the test. That is Friday's test. What says that? I actually don't see that. I don't know where that, I think there's a reading assignment that I'm assuming you'll do, but I don't see it on this page. No? No. Not there either. Okay, I don't know where it is, but okay. So any questions before I make some recommendations for how you spend the rest of your time today? Yeah, Ben. I'm happy to answer questions about limits at your table. Okay, all right. Other questions? Okay. So just a reminder, I will accept homework up until the start of Wednesday's test. Any late homework, I will give you full credit for up until 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning. All right. And I'll walk around today. If you have homework, take it out and I'll take a look at it. And again, if you have a project that you didn't turn in, put it in the folder for me. Okay, here's my recommendation. In class number 10, there was an activity called interpreting graphs. It was the problem that had parts A through X. I'm sure you remember that. There were a bunch of problems on that page that I asked you to skip because we didn't have the second derivative yet. My recommendation is that you go back to that activity and you do those ones that you skipped. After you finish those, it should be pretty quick to go through those. After you finish those, here are 2 choices. On the very next page is another problem set that looks an awful lot like the one that we had before, but it's actually quite a bit different. The one that we did before that graph was called F. Here it's exactly the same graph, but what is it called? F prime. And so it is completely changing, like your brain is going to have to think about that graph completely differently to answer the same kinds of questions that you did before. So you're welcome to, I think you should go back and finish the one that looks like this that you didn't finish. Then you're welcome to either come here and do all of these, and or a couple of pages down the road is the sample test problems. Some folks like to use this time to make the review sheet. I think that's okay, but honestly, I think it'd be better if you were working on problems because while you're here, you have resources around you, each other and me. Making the review sheet is something that you can do on your own, certainly. But if you get stuck, if you have questions, I think this is the time to discover them. So raise a flag if I can help, and as usual, work with each other.